So, one of the goals of the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast is to inspire you, to help you, whether it's before you go through a divorce, during divorce, after divorce, just help you have a better life. And today, this is going to be a great episode because I am going to offer two things that I believe will change your life forever: feeling worthy and focusing on healing versus playing the victim. Now, I want to tell you that I did not come up with these things. My guest did. My guest is Michelle Heffron, divorce, relationships, and life coach. And Michelle, welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm so honored to be here. I always love our time together, so thank you for having me.
Same here. And I wanted to tell my listeners, so what I did was I read two of Michelle's articles, and I'm like, both of these things are really helpful for people, especially before, during, or after divorce. So I want to start, Michelle, with feeling unworthy, whether that's in your marriage, at the end of your marriage, during divorce, after divorce. Why do a countless number of women feel unworthy? Like you wrote in your article, they say things like, you're not worth it, you don't deserve it. They say things that to themselves like that. Why do we do this?
Well, that's a really deep subject. It really, so much of it, and not to go psychotherapy here, but you develop these feelings of your own self-worth at very young ages. And, and these things, um, they turn into what we make meaning of in our lives. And so oftentimes it's for me, what I learned is that I was a second child, and I felt very unwanted by my parents when I was very small. Now, that didn't mean they didn't want me. It just that was a time in their life that happened to be a very challenging time. And the last thing they needed was another baby to come along. And so, what I did was internalize that as I'm not wanted, I don't matter, and I'm not needed. And then I also decided somewhere in my deep consciousness that I therefore don't need anyone. And that had become kind of that narrative that I subconsciously pulled into my adult life. And that is what so many of us do. And without understanding where we get triggered by these things, and that's that little small child acting out rather than us adult persons. And that's where some of that comes from.
Okay, that's so interesting you say that because I want to tell my listeners you could have the best parents on earth. It's not a reflection on your parents. It's what you as a child perceive. Even if, Michelle, I'm sure your parents, I've heard you talk about your mom, totally wanted you and loved you, but that's just what you perceived. And that's something that people really can't control. So it's not your parents' fault. It's not your fault. And so when we get older, we have to learn these behaviors so that we can have healthy relationships in our lives. And okay, another thing, tell me if you agree with this, and I know you do because you wrote it in the article. You wrote, remember the time someone told you your dreams were unrealistic or that focusing on yourself was you being selfish? Those are limiting beliefs that can cling like glitter and they can be impossible to shake off. And so I'm going to tell my listeners, I remember when I was like in my late 20s and I decided I wanted to go back to school and become a TV reporter. And I had so many people tell me, "Oh my gosh, I have so much respect for you. That's awesome. Wow, you have so much courage." But then there were people who were like, "You know what? It's a really tough job. You're never going to get a job. It's so hard. It's like trying to become an actor." And they were right. It was. But why would they tell me that? Don't say that. Just say, "I'm proud of you. It's great. If it's making you happy, that's what you should do." And so we my whole point of saying this is throughout our lives, we take what people say, the negatives, and we internalize that. And then maybe it's so much of it that we feel like we're not worthy.
Yes, there's that piece of it. And what we also don't realize when those people are telling us these things, it's they are projecting their own sense of uh, doubt,
Yeah, like they don't think they're worthy.
1,000%. And this is what we're hearing often is these people who love us, they supposedly care about us, and they're taking our dreams and they're smushing them because they're afraid of their lack of being able to do something, or they're afraid that if you do that, then you might actually be successful. And sometimes that makes them feel uncomfortable. So it's other people's uncomfortability
Yeah.
um, to want what you want in your life. And we as parents, I don't know about you, but I have certainly done that because it's easy to do. I mean, you want your children to do certain things, and it starts very young for us.
Okay, now that brings me to what I just said about when people say if you focus on yourself, you're being selfish. And
Mhm.
that's a lot of things I think people listening to this are feeling. They're either hearing it from their husband in an unhappy marriage, or they're hearing it from their husband in a divorce or wife. I don't want to just say it's all women, but
Right?
you know, to want to have a better, happier life is not being selfish, it's being smart.
It's definitely being smart because any of us who can achieve what we want in our life, or we what we desire, or we become more evolved and expand and grow and understand from within that happiness piece of it, we radiate this joy and happiness out, and it just makes everyone happier. Now, sometimes people don't want to see us change and grow because it makes them feel better to,
Keep us down.
keep us down or feel like they are our saviors or they are the ones who are protecting us. And but that doesn't bode well for people's own like self love and self value. And it's even when I know people hear this 1,000 times. It's why they ask you in the planes to put your oxygen mask on yourself before you help other people, because you cannot give what you do not have. And so some people think about, well, I have to put everybody else ahead of me because, that's the kind of person I am. Well, guess what? You've got to start putting yourself ahead of your own self so you can give more to other people. And that's how we give. There's so much, there's so much to it, Jack.
Absolutely. And you're not only giving more, you're giving better. You're just a better person.
Well, and you also, this is part of what we talk about in setting boundaries. When you can set some really, really um, healthy boundaries for yourself, it also then gives people the opportunity to um, respect your boundaries and respect you more as a person. And so that's a hard shift in mindset a lot of times for people, but that is one of the biggest. When I did this with my own kids, I remember they really saw me differently. They didn't see me as a doormat anymore. They saw me as someone who was standing up, and they admire it now. But boy, shifting that from allowing everybody to walk over you to, you know, kind of creating a life that you really love and desire, and that you also set some healthy boundaries around it. I taught people how to treat me better. And that's
And not only will they admire it, they'll do it. They'll
that too.
they'll model it.
They won't, yeah,
You're
absolutely.
listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Today, I am here with divorce, relationships, and life coach Michelle Heffron. And Michelle and I are talking about two things that we think will help change your life totally for the better. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to get to the second thing, which is focusing on healing and less on being a victim. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Are you feeling unworthy during marriage or in your divorce? And also, are you maybe playing the victim a little too much? That's what we're talking about today. Two things in a shifted mindset that can help you have a happier, better life. My guest is Michelle Heffron, divorce, relationships, and life coach. If you like what you're hearing and you want to go to Michelle for a consult or coaching, I would highly recommend her. And you can find her at michelleheffron.com. And it's one L in Michelle and two F's in Heffron. Okay, Michelle, before we move on to the stop playing the victim part of this podcast, tell me how somebody can get to a place of feeling worthy, of feeling like they deserve it. Like, is it something you have to practice? Does seeing a divorce coach help in this? Tell me what they can do.
That's a great question. There's so many resources out there, and I know a lot of people read a lot of books, and I recommend a host of different materials for people. But it isn't enough to know these things. You really must start applying things in your life to become it. Um, it's like going to the gym once and kind of going through a little workout and expecting yourself to be in shape the next day. These worthiness is the same thing, and developing a sense of worthiness happens over time and with a great amount of intention and attention.
And
I work with
practice, like
and practice,
practice.
and that is what it is. It is a practice because it's that repetition. It's what is yourself. What are you reminding yourself of every day? I have a lot of people. When I work with clients, we really talk about setting intentions, and a lot of times they'll say, "Well, I don't want to feel this way anymore," and I'm like, "Well, why don't we turn that around? Your intentions really need to be towards what you do want, not what you don't want." And so when you're focusing on what you want, focus on what you want always, envisioning, it's bigger than visioning, it's envisioning yourself in a situation where you are feeling loved and supported. And sometimes in the middle of a divorce, that's a really hard thing to do. But I believe, having gone through my two divorces and not understanding any of this, that I could have healed myself so much faster had I been working on this at the same time. So yes, I mean, working with a coach, therapist, I like, yeah, I think therapy is awesome because it really does kind of get into, why things are happening in your life a certain way. But with the coaching, we get to the why, but it's like, okay, now what do we want to do about it? What are
Yes,
the steps? What do we do? Let's build a roadmap here. Let's help you get to that better place. So
right.
when you get through the divorce or whatever really difficult situation you're going through, you're at a place to jump off and go, hey, I'm ready. And it's
Okay.
ongoing.
Okay, now I was going to say two things. The first thing is you can take baby steps. So you don't have to do everything all at once. But like, for example, a few years ago, I was having like a lot of back pain. And so I decided to start getting massages. Now, some people might say, oh, I don't deserve it. It's an hour away from work or my kids, and I can't afford it, whatever. Well, guess what? I started getting regular massages and the back pain got better. And so that was like just a small example of something you can do to say, you know what? I am worth taking the time out of my day. I am worth spending the money on myself. Second thing is the reason I love coaching and the reason I love Michelle for coaching is because Michelle has walked this walk. Like we were talking before the podcast, and Michelle, you were telling me about some things that you invested in yourself, like coaching for yourself, um, trips in other countries with this group. That costs a lot of money and that takes a lot out of your time, but you feel that you deserve it and it has completely helped you in your growth trajectory. So, you're a great example for somebody. So, That is one of the reasons I think you're a great coach, because you really have lived this and you're not just telling people what to do, you did it yourself.
Absolutely, and I continue to do it. I think evolution is an ongoing thing, and we are, as humans, meant to grow and expand. And I don't know what I would do if I wasn't continually growing and expanding, which is part of it. And I also want to tell the listeners, Jackie, is that as I mentioned to you, I just a few short years ago, I could never have imagined myself doing the things I do. And I look at those, like the trips, for instance, are like a pattern interrupt. It's like, it's so easy to get yourself kind of into like a rut, or I could never do that. That's just not me. I don't have the money. I don't have this. And when I started opening up to other possibilities, I mean, when the first time I invested in a real coach, I was just like, my heart caught. I was like, okay. But it really made me see what else was possible. And it it literally changed my life. It literally changed my life. Um and that's and way back when, even before I decided to go down this whole path, I knew somehow this was what I was meant to do because I felt so called to it. So
Well, it's funny. I just got back from a trip to Greece. I went on a culinary and wellness retreat with Hannah McKittrick from My Intuitive Health, myintuitivehealth.com. I had to give her a plug.
when she's
And
delightful.
she is delightful. That's a great adjective to describe her. But Michelle, I was the same way. I was so scared. I'm like, I can't afford this. I've never been out of the country since I was 21. I had to travel there by myself. I felt like $1,000,000 from the day I got on the plane to go until even now after the retreat. It's just staying with me. And believe me, I want to tell my listeners, I was scared. I was scared financially. I was scared to travel to another country by myself. I was scared. So, okay, I want to move on to the second thing that Michelle and I feel will change your life for the better, and that's focus on healing rather than what has been done to you, as in other words, feeling like a victim. And this comes from an article Michelle wrote called From Arrows of Pain to Power. And in the article, Michelle, you say that there was a time in my life when I was the queen of blame. If somebody hurt me, they were going to hear about it. I'd replay every wrong, every sharp word, make sure the person knew just how much damage they'd caused. And you felt anger. And so I swear, I feel like reading this whole article. It was so good, but I'm just going to read one more sentence. You stumbled upon a quote by Pema Chodron. Is that how you say her name?
Yes, it's Pima Chodron.
And this quote says, if someone comes along and shoots an arrow into your heart, it's fruitless to stand there and yell at the person. It would be much better to turn your attention to the fact that there's an arrow in your heart. So explain that and why it's such a good quote.
For me, Jackie, it was this kind of a aha moment that made me look back within my own self to see where I was um, making other people the source of my happiness. I was making myself a victim and feeling that I had been so wronged. And so, I went around waving that I'm a victim flag all the time, but I never felt any better. And so it really didn't matter who um, sympathized or empathized with me. It was just like I kept digging myself into this big mud hole of victimhood, and I wasn't getting any better. And so that was the person I was showing up as. And that's not what I want to show up as in my life. So when I had to really, and trust me, this takes some time to go through, and some real intention around it. And I still find areas where I still fall into that victim space. So I'm no, expert at everything, but I also know now that if I don't want to hurt, then it's on me not to hurt. And it's as much as you allow people to shoot the arrows at you, what are you going to allow into your life and what are you not going to? And it was definitely a mindset shift. And I do work with people a lot in this area because when you can start to look through a different lens, you can start to experience life differently. It doesn't mean that things aren't happening around you. It doesn't mean that people aren't behaving badly. It just means that that's kind of their side of the street and it's not yours to deal with.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. So basically, stuff's gonna happen.
Yes.
You're gonna get aggravated by your ex if you're going through a divorce or divorced. You're going to get a phone call from your lawyer that is gonna make you want to just crawl into bed and cry for 3 days.
Yes.
You're gonna find out your ex might is dating your neighbor, whatever. It could be anything.
Yes.
Things are gonna happen. In other words, what Michelle is trying to say is you're gonna get these arrows in your heart. And we're not telling you not to experience and let yourself be upset about it. You have to grieve it. You have to be upset. You have to cry, whatever you need to do. But then when you're done with the crying and feeling sorry for yourself, this is all about how you're going to handle this. What are you going to do? Are you going to talk about it with your friends for the next 3 months that you can't believe your ex already has a girlfriend and that he picked your neighbor? Or are you going to say, okay, here's what I can control, and here's how I'm going to heal myself of this? And if that means coaching, reading books, what else can they do, Michelle? What does that look like to heal yourself?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's a big, a, a big thing because, obviously there's going to be, certain circumstances that are going to feel like bigger issues than other ones. So, more of this gets to, understanding that the anger that shows up is important to acknowledge. Anger is not necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't need to go on and on and on. And sometimes anger can be the motivator to take some real inspired action, and to be able to acknowledge that is not a bad thing. The other piece of it is to give yourself permission to heal, to say, I love you to yourself and know that you're going to be okay. And maybe you do spend a day or two in bed. Take it if you need it. Give yourself permission to do that. Give yourself permission not to have to be the best mom for the day or the top performer or whatever it is. Some days you just need to cry. Then we go, and what's the next thing? What's the next better thing we can do? What's the next better thing? So it's not the same for everyone, Jackie. Everybody kind of has to feel for what's right for them. I am huge on getting centered and meditating through some things because I think that is so important, and it's such a missed opportunity when people say, oh, I just can't do that. I can't sit still that long. Well, it's just like that muscle we talked about earlier. It's just starting maybe 30 seconds at a time and just quieting your mind. And anyone can meditate if they want to. I mean, it's really just an excuse not to, if you say that it doesn't work for
And
you.
meditating, you could do it for 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
Meditation does not have to be like, oh, I'm gonna start meditating every day for an hour. You don't have to do that. 15
No.
minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it works. It
And
really
there
does.
are so many great resources out there. I mean, even just going to YouTube, sometimes you can find some great meditations that are 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and a lot of guided meditations. And, you have to find what works for you. Everything doesn't work for everybody. It's not
Or
that.
go to a yoga class. Then you're killing two birds with one stone because you're also stretching and
Yep.
working your body. Okay, but Michelle, I wanted to see what you think of this idea because I just thought of it and I also want to ask my listeners what they think. But, if something really, get some really bad news and you're really upset about it, you feel like you got stabbed with an arrow in the heart, and you're trying to take Michelle's and I advice by not playing the victim. I would say get a piece of paper and write down everything you're going to work on to make yourself feel better. Like just write, how am I going to feel better? Question mark. And then write down, I'm going to keep looking for a job on LinkedIn by sending 3 inquiries a day. I'm going to make plans with so and so who is this wonderful friend of mine who makes me feel so good about myself, and I'm going to go to dinner with her. Whatever it is, and then check everything off your list. What do you think of that idea?
I think those are great ideas, Jackie. I also think that when you talk about um, what you're going to do as an I am, as an actual intention, I am calling so and so by 4 o'clock this afternoon and setting up a time with her. I am, and make those actionable, really, because sometimes when we put things into the future, it's easy not to do them. And what we
Right.
want to do is not put so much pressure on ourselves because that just becomes a list to check off. But
Oh,
sometimes
okay.
looking at the ways that, we can incorporate this goodness into our life is making it easier and lighter. I also recommend, and I know a lot of people get tired of hearing about gratitude, but journaling on gratitude, and it's not just about all the little things in your life. Sometimes I look back now and I think about I am in gratitude for all the crap that happened to me in so many ways because now I'm seeing that it happened for me. Now, when I was in the middle of it all, I didn't see it that way, but talking through it in a way of gratitude or something like that, or what does make you happy? I mean, I'm looking outside right now. It's this beautiful fall day. I'm in the Seattle area. Their leaves are all orange and yellow and beautiful, and it's such a that brings me joy right now. I know it's little, but it also is one of those things that I'm okay right here, right now, and all is good. And so, kind of taking
I
it
would call that grounding yourself. And it's hard to ground yourself when you hear something that feels like a stab in your heart. It's hard, but if you practice it, it really does help and say, I'm standing here, I'm healthy, it's beautiful out. You know, yes, I'm hurting very badly, but just grounding the basics is extremely helpful.
absolutely. And it sounds small, but just all those little things you can do for yourself in the moment, just take the time to do it. And I think one of the biggest things for women in particular is just giving ourselves permission to feel better.
Right. By saying, "I'm worth it, I deserve this, and I'm going to take control of the things I can and not worry about what I can't."
And remember that it's just like you got at the beginning, you might not believe it because it might sound like it's untruthful to you, but repeating those things, repetition, is what the key is in so many of these, for so much of this evolution, if you will.
Michelle, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I can't believe we're out of time, but I wanted to thank you for spending the time, and I love all of your advice, and tell my listeners the best way to reach you if they want to consult or work with you.
Thank you, Jackie. So you can find me at michelleheffron.com. That's MichelleHeffron.com. Like Jackie said, I have one L in my name. I'm also on LinkedIn. I have a podcast called Getting to the Heart, Life, Relationships, and Divorce. And I'm on social media, and I hope you'll follow me and contact me. I offer a free consult for anyone who's looking to make some changes in their life, or they're thinking about going through divorce, or in the middle of one, or coming out of one. I'd love to talk to you.
And Michelle writes the best articles. One of the best people of writing articles. I always read your articles, every single one, Michelle. They're so
Um,
good. So
thank
definitely follow Michelle. You can also find Michelle in the trusted professionals section of Divorced Girl Smiling, along with so many other wonderful, trusted, vetted divorce professionals like attorneys, mediators, real estate agents, financial advisors, and more. And you can also go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com to listen to more Divorced Girl Smiling podcasts, to read more articles, to sign up for my free consult or to download my mobile app. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.